job thing. Glad to have you here. I don't know how many were here last week, but we had a amazing speaker on networking. This week we have Holly Slade, who is going to speak to us on time management. And just to give you a little bit of background on Holly, she's been a real estate broker for over 20 years. She sells at a high level. She also designs and furnishes renovation properties for a company that both she and her husband own. And she recently founded the nonprofit organization Feed New Mexico Kids. We're probably all familiar with that. Her days are...
Oh, that's better. Thank you so much. Right now I would like to say thank you.
Uh-oh. Do you want to go up there, Michelle, and let her know?
Uh-oh. Guess what? We're doing the practical thing.
There you go.
Okay,
That's because people
Awesome.
were saying that they needed to hear it if they're listening to the sermon.
Okay, now we know. Anyways, her days are a complex mix of homeowners and buyer, inspection, volunteers, paint, tile, granite, kit, husband, friends, grandchildren, and a fluffy dog named Steinbeck. What kind of a dog is that?
An Aussie doodle.
Ooh. Through the years, she has adopted some simple strategies for prioritizing the Lord, family, work, friends, and ministry. So, welcome to Holly Slade.
Thank you, hon. Thank you. Hi, everybody. So they have this mic here, and I think it only feeds into the video camera there. So can everybody hear me? Can you ladies in the back? Awesome. Yes, exactly. Okay, there's a comedian in every crowd. All right.
Made you smile.
Hi, everybody. So, when we think about it, we have to first ask our question, what is time? And I mean, when you think about it, you think that you might be able to define time, but actually even physicists cannot define time. So sometimes they refer to it as the fourth dimension, but really time is something that is hard for people to define. So it's referred to as a season. It can be a point on a continuum. It can be a marker of events, past, present, and future. And so our clocks and our calendars, what they do is they measure a numerical order of physical change. So time is actually a physical change that happens, and the tools that we use only reflect kind of the passing of it. It orders our worlds. So time cannot be purchased. We can't create it. And here's the spoiler alert. We cannot manage it. So we cannot manage time any more than we manage gravity. Like, we don't climb up to tall buildings, right, and plan to hurl ourselves off and say, I'm going to conquer this gravity thing. So what we have to learn is what does it really mean if we try and structure our day in a more efficient manner? What it boils down to is we manage ourselves within the context of time. So that's the one thing that we really have to have a paradigm shift when we talk about time management, and we refer to it, as kind of a little catch-all phrase. So I want you to know that I will refer to it as time management. What I really mean is managing yourself within the context of time, okay? So when we talk about it, time is a force that acts upon us, but it's also a resource. If you think about it, when you wake up in the morning, nobody pays you for gravity. You cannot use gravity to help educate or clothe your children. Time is this free resource, a commodity that is given to us, and we trade it for things. So Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, he said, "My favorite things in life don't cost any money. It's really clear that the most precious resources we all have is time." So Steve Jobs had more money than all of us combined, right? Steve Jobs had more worldly influence than all of us combined. Steve Jobs had more earthly power than all of us combined. But Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple, ran out of time. He died at age 56. And so if we had Steve Jobs' money, we would consult with experts. We would figure out a strategy on how to invest it in order to get the maximum return. If we had his power, we would do the same thing. And yet most of the time what happens is we let time sort of slip through our hands. We end up with wasted time. So what we want to do today is really have a paradigm shift. That's really the goal here, is to have a paradigm shift in how we think about time, rather than think of it as this thing that just kind of comes and goes almost passively like we think about air. We really want to think about managing it, wrangling it, turning it into the resource that it is. Okay, and being better stewards of our time is a lifelong process because we enter different seasons. Okay, so managing your time when you're a student looks different than managing your time when you're a working adult, and then, oh, by the way, now you got married, and oh, by the way, now you had a child, and oh, by the way, now you have 3 children, and oh, by the way, you've got 3 children, some are in school, they're all in sports, and you're working a job, and your husband's working a job, and now an elderly parent is sick and moving in with you. So it's rather than I am going to get my schedule down once and for all, and I'm going to live that schedule, and it's going to be an iron and going to make everybody's life around me miserable if they don't stick to my schedule. It's about learning the discipline of evaluating your season and even evaluating your day. So I don't have any 2 days that look alike. Because of Feed New Mexico Kids, I can be called into radio stations or TV stations at 6 in the morning for recordings. But because I have a full-time job as a realtor, I can be doing listing appointments at 6 o'clock at night. So when I manage my time, it has to be in large chunks. I have to sort of look at my week. Lori works on our team with us, and she had to work really hard to get me to move from paper to an electronic calendar many, many years ago. And that was because I needed to see the whole thing. I had to see the broad picture. So she got me on an electronic calendar. So my work stuff goes on there because other people populate my calendar. But in my personal life, guess what I still have? I still have some paper because, I mean, there's stuff going on in my life, like the people that I work with on our team, we all share a calendar. They don't need to see my little pick up avocado at the grocery store on the way home, right? But believe it or not, because I have so much going on, that has to be written down somewhere. Or the avocado's not happening, and then the guacamole's not happening, and then the rest of dinner's not happening, right? So we do that. So Ecclesiastes 3:1 says there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the sun, which means you don't have to do it all in the season that you're in, right? The Proverbs 31 woman is a lifetime, right? There is a time and a season for everything that you're doing, and you need to embrace and learn how to prioritize in the season that you're in. So I told you we would get back to the term time management, because if you want to Google tools, you'll be Googling time management, okay? But you need to have the paradigm shift. I am not managing time. I am not managing gravity. I'm managing myself, and therefore you have choices. So we're going to use some tips and tricks. We gave you the handout. We're going to go to the handout at the end, but if you need to write the tips and tricks on the back, just flip it over and write these. The first one that is pretty much universal throughout workplaces and also at home is schedule, schedule, schedule. And I just want you to know that that has to be from the Lord, because I wrote schedule, schedule, schedule before I even knew what Lenny was teaching on. All right? So there's your trifecta of schedule, schedule, schedule. Your days and your weeks. You need to use paper calendar or an electronic calendar or an app, but you must write down your schedule. If it is not written down, things that you want to do will not happen, and things that you don't want to happen will happen. All right, so if you ever thought, I'm going to look on Instagram or Facebook for 15 minutes, right?
Pinterest.
And how long? Okay, Pinterest too, yeah. And then you look up and how much time has gone by?
2 hours.
Okay, so did you intend for that to happen? No. But if you have it written down and you account for it, are you going to go every day from now on not looking at social media? Probably not. But we're going to decide in advance, what is a reasonable amount of time for me in my life to spend on social media? And you're going to write that down. Then you're going to schedule it in your day and hold yourself accountable to that, because it does slip away. And I know Netflix binging is a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And that goes on there too. Do you have things that you want to watch on Netflix? Absolutely. Write it down in advance. It's just like budgeting. You know how everybody says you spend your money on paper first and then you spend your actual money? It's the same thing with time. Remember, it's a resource. We trade time for money. We trade time for raising our children. We trade time for building relationship. We trade time for relaxation. We trade time for recreation. And so you have to get in our minds that time is it's a resource, and it's our most valuable resource. So the second thing that we need to look at is multitasking. And the general rule of multitasking is do not multitask anything that involves a relatively high amount of thought. For example, no answering work emails while you're trying to help your child with their homework. Those two things don't go together. And what it does is it causes increased stress and frustration. There was actually a study done on that, and I'll give you those stats. But there are other things that go together nicely. So for instance, in my life, I don't like to spend the weekend doing laundry, but I have several loads of laundry that have to be done each week. But I don't want to stay home on Saturday and do that. I have another chore that I don't like. It's called cooking dinner. So my kitchen is next to my laundry room. So in the evening, the chicken goes in the frying pan, the socks go in the washer. So far I haven't flipped them around, so we're good. You know, but I combine chores. Now that's an example of multitasking that can go together because neither one requires a whole lot of, high level concentration on my part. Okay, so I can get those things done, then by the end of the week, I don't have a pile of laundry sitting there for me. Okay, so when we look at multitasking, there was actually a study done. Gloria Martin, she's a professor of informatics, okay, at the University of California, Irvine. 82% of all interrupted work is resumed the same day, but it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to get back to the task. Yeah. So if you are in the middle of problem solving, if you're in the middle of a project, and this goes for helping your child with algebra or a project at work, and something completely unrelated that again requires thought, not just sign this document, that doesn't require a lot of thought except if you want to read the document, then it takes 23 minutes to get back on track. So then she was asked, what are the psychological costs of all of the task switching that goes on in a workday? And she said, we found there's significantly more stress. We did a laboratory experiment where people did a typical office task. They had to answer a set of email, and in one condition, they were not interrupted. In another condition, they interrupted them with phone calls and instant message. So not a whole lot of high-level stuff, right? Then they used a NASA workload scale, and it measured the various dimensions of stress, and they found that people scored significantly higher when interrupted. They had higher levels of stress, frustration, mental effort, feeling of time pressure, and mental workload. So whatever you can do to eliminate those task interruptions, and we actually do them to ourselves. So they asked her the next question. What advice did she give to people who felt like they couldn't keep up, who felt like the interruptions were coming in on them? And you know what she said? Limit your web usage. Her number one piece of advice for people who are being weighed down by multitasking and interruptions and that 23 minutes that it takes to try and just get yourself back on track. She says, be disciplined, right? We're managing ourselves. So we're going to be disciplined. She says she is the most productive if she limits her web usage to twice a day, morning and evening. But she said realistically it takes 4 times a day. Some of us have jobs where we are responsible to be on the internet, watching the emails, answering the phone calls, and that type of thing. When I was preparing for this teaching, I thought, how many emails do I get in a day? And so I just picked a day, and I didn't clear them for several hours, and I just counted. I get an email every 2 minutes, okay? So when I finish an appointment, I get in my car, I go through and I delete the unnecessary ones. I'm watching for anything urgent. Then I'm reaching out to Lori. job actually receiving emails and phone calls from all kinds of partner entities, from banks, from title companies, from investors. I mean, that's her world is being interrupted. I would lose my mind if I had her job. But that's where she lives, and she's learned over the years how to make that work for her. She has tools that she applies in her job. So those are the first two sort of universal, no matter if you're a student, if you're working, if you're staying at home, those are universal tools to apply. Yes?
Web usage, are you also saying email is considered web usage? I was thinking just going online to the web.
If you are tasking in your work and you don't need to check your email for the task that you're on, you don't stop yourself and go check your email. Okay? Does that make sense? Thank you for clarifying. So universal tip number 3 for most of us, plan your weekly meals. Plan them and try and get all of your grocery shopping done at once, okay? Here's why that worked. How many of you have ever gone home and you're gonna make dinner and you don't have half the ingredients? Okay, so where's your stress level at that point? Where's your frustration level at that point? Where's your mental workload? Now, who's going to the store? So it's the same thing. If you look on page 2 in your handout, this was a very simple $1.99 thing, so please don't reproduce it without purchasing it on Etsy, was a little scheduling sheet. And so I filled mine out just because I thought, well, this is a different format. Let me see if I like that format better. And I found it kind of happy. Because what I did is I had 3 things on this given day that had to be done for my work. Now, I had appointments. I had a note that I was going to be on the east side for lunch. I had back to my office. Then I had my little list of things that I was going to do when I was back in front of a computer. And so mine goes on down over here because my day really, I schedule my day from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. What am I doing and where am I doing it? Do I have flexibility? Yes. Do I schedule margin? Yes. Do I schedule commute time? Yes. Margin is incredibly important. Try not to schedule appointments that involve other people from 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12. Why? Because they run over, right? And then you're stressed because now you're late for your next appointment. And now that one runs over the margin that the first one was late, plus its own run over time. And by the time you get to appointment number 3, your day is completely thrown off. How many times have we been at the doctor's office, right? And they're an hour and a half behind. And they only have 15-minute appointments. How did they get an hour and a half behind when their appointments are only 15? Because they didn't leave enough margin. So you want to schedule that in your day. Then by knowing what your meals are, you have the opportunity to say, oh, you know, I thought I had a bell pepper, but it's rotten. And so part of what we do sometimes is we enlist other people to help us with our time management. So I have a little note here because I knew where Dave was going to be this week. Would he please pick up the bell pepper on the way home? And so at the beginning of the day, rather than call him at 5 o'clock, right, when he's had something go on in his day, and, oh, by the way, can you stop and get the bell pepper? No, I can't, neither can I, blah, 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 now the meal's shot. It's in the morning. Hey, I know you're going to be near this store. Can you run in and get the little tri-colored organic bell peppers, you know, that are only at Trader Joe's? And he'll tell me yes or no. And I can plan my day accordingly. So I like this little sheet, super, super simple, but it's an example of how you can write some of the things down. Okay, so tip number 4 for managing our time. I told you I don't like cooking dinner. Don't like it. So I cook once and eat 2 or 3 times off of it if at all possible. So we grill, we do chicken breast, hamburger. I eat the hamburgers. We actually eat buffalo burger or yak burger, whatever. It's more lean. So we eat those when they're hot. The next day, slice up the chicken. It's fajitas or something like that. On the 3rd day, when there's less chicken, it's chopped up. It goes on a big salad with vegetables, nuts, and added protein. Okay? I'm going to speed it up because we are running out of time. So, number 5, everyone in the family prepares for the next day in the evening. You know what you're wearing tomorrow, your homework is set out, your projects for the day are set out, You have gone over the schedule. Does anybody have dental appointments? Does anybody have doctor's appointments? Do we all know where we're going tomorrow? Because it's a whole lot easier to stay up 15 minutes more tonight to handle an emergency than it is to be 15 minutes late for school and work, okay? Then our next one is set a time on your tasks. All right, if you are a procrastinator, tell yourself, I only have to do it for 25 minutes. 2 magic numbers for setting times on your tasks, 25 minutes and 45 minutes. There are 2 different studies, and they say, one of them says we are most motivated for 25 minutes and then we need a break. Another one says 45 minutes and then we need a break. Test it with yourselves, test it with your kids, but set a timer, especially if you're a perfectionist. If something is going to take you 2 hours that should only take 1, set a timer in reverse for yourself, okay? And then the last one is to set a value on your time. So take your hourly rate at work, or if you're a stay-at-home domestic engineer, salary.com actually says a stay-at-home domestic engineer taking care of children is worth $162,000 a year. So try that. You just got, now if you could just get somebody to actually give you the dollars for that, right? So set a value on your time. And now when you are going through the top page on your handout, this is where you're going to sit down prayerfully and say, how much time in a week or a day is appropriate for these tasks? You think your hourly wage, you think what's respectable and appropriate. If you're spending an hour on your quiet time each day, do you want to spend 3 hours on social media? That's your call. This is a judgment-free zone, but you decide in advance. You're intentional. When you see that you're going to spend 3 hours binging on Netflix, how much do you make per hour? Is that really how you want to spend that time? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes you have had an incredibly difficult week. You haven't had a break. It's Friday night, it's date night, and by golly, we're going to watch 2 movies. That's going to be 3 hours, and we're going to do it. That's okay, as long as it's intentional and you didn't slip into it accidentally when you intended to be doing something else. So we are at the very end here. I really want to encourage everybody, please, please, please take these handouts home. Please pray over how much time you want to be spending on the events in your life. The top sheet was just something that I wrote down. It's a starter. Finisher. Take 7 paper pages because you're going to erase and scribble out and do all this, right? You can transfer it to an electronic medium after you've sort of perfected what you're doing. What do you want your Monday to look like? What do you want your Tuesday to look like? My Sunday, Dave and I work very hard to have it be a Sabbath day. I don't cook on that day. I don't do laundry on that day. We do recreate. We go bike riding. We go hiking. We physically exert. You know, we're not napping. But I try not to do chores, especially the ones I don't like. So that is where we are with trying to manage ourselves within the context of time, our most valuable resource. So thank you all very much.
That was awesome. I could sit and listen to you for 45 more minutes. Everybody else too, huh?
Yes.
Wish we had more time. Anyways, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I've got some good takeaways that I'm going to apply to my life.
Yay.
So I'm sure you guys do too. Anyways,